start recording. So welcome to another episode of To Thine Own Self Be True. I'm Brenda Thyne, and tonight I am absolutely stoked to welcome on my show a wonderful compatriot here in Canada and in Ontario to boot. Matthew Belair is with me tonight. This is episode 6, and I'm thrilled. Mind, body, and spirit master. I have to say, that's what I call you. I was looking at your stuff a little bit. I followed you for a number of, a couple of years now anyway, and I just love your stuff. Every time I turn around, there's a new Matthew Belair. I'm like, right on, let's spend an hour. Let's sit down, put the kettle on. Tell me a little bit about you. I want to know, obviously, about how you are staying true to yourself, because that's really what this whole series is about. It's about people who have been called to a path, divinely directed, as we just mentioned, and are staying true to that no matter what, right? I mean, it's not always an easy path when you're, when you're walking on a mission for the divine. It's sometimes challenging, and there's obstacles, of course. And so, Matthew Belair, welcome to this show, and tell us a little bit about you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege and honor to be here. And as a fellow Canadian, lots of stuff going on in the world, and specifically Canada being one of those forefronts for communism and the new order rollout. So the more of us here that are aware of what's going on, the better. For me, when I was a kid, I loved martial arts. So it was about mind, body, spirit then. And I always had this spiritual connection because when they were talking about doing these amazing things, breaking bricks and all these different stuff, there was a mental element to that. It wasn't just the body. I understood that there was some sort of focus or mind power. So like, what is this mind power? And, as a young person, I loved sports. I played hockey and I was into skateboarding and snowboarding, but I was always very interested in consciousness and enlightenment and God and the creator and spirit and anything to alter the consciousness, like to evolve my consciousness and just even explore that, what that was. So I was asking these questions at a young age, and also looking on my television, realizing something wasn't adding up because I didn't understand how we could have war and starvation. Right. I didn't understand how I could live in this house and then we'd have these people starving to death. So, I kind of pursued these avenues in my own world and going to Whistler and becoming a snowboard coach. And I was reading things on performance. So everything woo woo and law of attraction and like all that stuff was so fascinating to me. In Calgary, I'm going through all the psychic books. So like, how do I be a psychic? How do I develop my intuitive powers? And then in sports performance, learning about the, peak performance psychology, mindset, all this different type of training, and then testing it. And so, I became a professional snowboard coach and did that for a while. And then I wanted to travel because I want to immerse myself with the people who can do it. Right. Like if I'm training strength, I want to go around the guy who's the strongest person in the world and say, how did you do that? Or if they're the best snowboarder or the best entrepreneur or, the number one philanthropist, how did you create this offer to people? What did you do? How do you think? And one of the great books I read a long time ago is just a basics of neuro linguistic programming, because that's a really short synopsis of how our mind operates, not into crazy psychological stuff, but you kind of model excellence, right? And I was very heavily influenced by Bruce Lee, who would, take what he would like and learn from everybody as a teacher. And you learn that in martial arts as well. Everybody's a teacher, but then you integrate what works for you. And when you're talking about, to your own self be true, that to me was the only difference, that when I got into, my later 20s and 30s, that I noticed the difference between me and all my friends is that I said, the only difference that I did is I just reflected on what was most important to me and where I was being called and what I enjoyed and what I wanted to do and who I was. And I would go do that thing. And then I would grow as an individual from those experiences. And then I get new desires and impulses. And so I would follow the things I was interested in learning and do that. And I would figure out a way to architect the reality that I was inspired to do, whether it's snowboarding or different things or travel. I'd written in my journal years about traveling the world, and it took maybe 10 years to accomplish. Even as a teenager, I knew I wanted to travel the world. And so a lot of them took a long time to manifest or create, but I was just asking myself those questions and then taking those little leaps. And so the bigger leaps of faith came because I did the smaller ones first, and I knew it would work out. I would be somehow protected. It would be okay if I took that big leap of faith. And I think that most people operate from a bit of this materialism mindset where they want to do the safest thing possible. right? They want to get the safest job, the most secure pension, and all these different things. And they're never asking themselves who they really are. So that's really fundamentally the difference between how I operate in my life and how I saw my friends and people, how they thought and then what they did in action and how they grew up and the choices they make.
Wonderful. Yeah. Um, yeah, like, and you have traveled. Excuse me, you have traveled. Okay, maybe not lately, but you've definitely done the traveling. Like, you're just a young guy, and you've been Nepal. You studied with monks there. You studied with some Shaolin monks, and what's the other thing? Oh, the native elders. Like, I mean, and I'm very drawn to the native communities, to the native traditions and the teachings as well. I have very dear friends on reserves here in Ontario that I'm blessed to be a part of their ceremonies and some of their retreats that they hold and things like that. So these these teachings they cultivate us into these incredible wise beings. I'm going to call us that because that's what we are, right? I mean, let's face it, information and experience bring us to that wisdom, and that's what you've got going on. And it shows. It's like your energy is all wisdom. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. And here we are in Ontario, where it is probably one of the hardest places to be right now in Canada, I would say too. So, what are you doing to stay up? What are you doing to keep yourself afloat and buoyant here in these heavy, heavy times?
That is a really great question. I haven't done it brilliantly, let's say. I feel like the absolute pinnacle of all these spiritual teachings is to have like 100% faith and certainty that, the creator is in control, God's in control. This is all for a reason, right? And so if I could believe that truly and then find that peace and contentment no matter what is happening in my external reality. That being said, I suck at doing that. Yeah, I get very grumpy because I get really upset when I see harm being done or where I see manipulation, where I see, a lot of terrible things going on and all of this chaos. And I'm empathetic. I feel very sad. So it's hard for me to do that, but I know that's the obvious premium way. So when I teach athletes and when I'm coaching people, whether they have a goal or as a young person with, or even an older person that wants to go to the Olympics or something like that, or a person that wants to create a business or design their life or whatever. It's like they've got this end goal, this thing they don't have. And I say, like, if you can be whole, happy, harmonious, and content wherever you are, and then aspire to go to that goal, then you're in a powerful place because now I have a daughter and she's beautiful and two. And so you wouldn't go to a kid and say, oh, well, you can't ride a bike yet without training wheels. So you're not good enough. You're not worthy. Or, oh, now you got the training wheels off. Well, you know what? You're not very good at reading and writing. Your grammar's all off. You're not really good enough yet. So then we get into high school. Oh, now you can read and write. But you know what? You haven't graduated college or university. So you're not really good enough or worthy yet. You need to keep going, right? You don't know enough. You're not there yet. So then you graduate university. It's like, well, you haven't got this promotion. You haven't been a successful entrepreneur. You haven't gotten your house yet. So you're not good enough yet. You're not worthy. And then you keep going down. Well, you didn't have that. Well, so whatever it is, right? So if there needs to be one thing outside of you to make yourself worthy and whole and full of self-love, then that will always change. It means you don't have it. Now I can say these words and I can understand them, but for me to integrate that is still an ongoing process. So that's a very long-winded way to say that one of the things I do strategically for this is when I have my worst days and I'm just a lumpy piece of crap, and it does happen. And it's been very hard couple years for me because of many reasons. My number one value is freedom. I know what's happening, and so that creates a lot of sadness and a lot of challenging days. So when I feel like the biggest piece of crap, I say, you know what? I'm going to make someone else happy. I'm going to make my wife happy. I'm going to make my daughter smile. I'm going to look for an opportunity to just do one thing. Even if this whole day I just do one thing for someone else, that's the thing that I'm going to try to focus on. So that's what I do tactically. I think that it's so important that we take care of our bodies. And so normally I like to skateboard and snowboard. That can't happen. So I'm in the gym more often. And one thing that's helped me therapeutically is lifting up heavy weight, but taking care of my body. I've always been athletic and enjoyed martial arts, and the heavy bag is always really helpful for me. But I think taking care of our body and then just going for walks, even if you just get out for a walk in nature, And the extra challenging part for me is where my lifestyle is out west. It's in the mountains where you can access all this nature. But because of the circumstances with my daughter and where we live and all that, we're here now. And so just not having that access to nature is a big part of like a missing part of me. And so it's been challenging. And so I just have to, when I get down, I just have to think about the small things that I can do and taking care of my body and see if my work lines up, see, what I can do to shift that state, because you can stay in the state for a minute or a day or 10 years. And so it's just recognizing that it's not bad to have the feelings. It's just shifting the state. When I'm like, all right, this is no longer serving me. What do I need to learn from this? And just change it by going for a walk, meditating, doing something nice for someone else, listening to nice music, whatever you got to do.
It is all about the energy. It really is. And like you said, it doesn't have to be permanent, right? It's energy, and emotion is something that's in flow. So let it go and let it flow. And you could be done in 5 minutes or you could be done in 5 hours. But either way, you got to honor yourself and what you're dealing with, right? Which I think is fabulous. We've all come here for this time. What's happening and unfolding right now is the main event. We are all here for this. However, I don't think many of us who are, psychically gifted or even in tune with guides who can channel information and stuff, we're kind of prepared for what the hell's unfolding. Like you could have knocked me over with a feather when I realized this guy was trying to convert this country to communism. I'm like, you've got to be shitting me, right? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, how do I stay up here with my clients? How do I stay, in that positive, uplifting space for people when I feel just like you, some days like the biggest bag of crap, because I'm like, oh my God, like I'm so human right now. I can't be in the fifth dimensional frequency at this moment. I'm pissed. The injustice is insane and I'm not happy about any of this. How do we move through it? It's very important that we keep that focus, but being real about it, right? Being true to yourself and honoring those moments, those days, those weeks, even whatever it may be, and letting people, authenticity is everything, right? Integrity is everything. And transparency, like I can't hide that I have those days and I don't want to. I want people to know I'm going through hard times too. It's not easy. Let's get together and we'll talk about it and maybe we'll feel better at the end, because we always do, right? We always do. And so thanks for sharing that honesty, because sometimes we wouldn't, right? We might just sort of neglect to put that part in the conversation. And it is extremely challenging. But martial artists, and that's one thing I always use that analogy, is that, you're never sparring off against anything you're not compatible with, right? Like you never end up with a yellow belt when you're in the middle of your black belt series. You're just not there. That just sparring is not a thing there. You're always going to be met with challenges that you are able to actually handle, right? So those really heavy days, those challenges, right? But I think that's really important for us to acknowledge that. You spoke earlier, oh, excuse me, I was watching you earlier. You were speaking on a video you did yesterday with Cal Washington, which I just love. And that's the second one. I think he's phenomenal. I actually joined the Empower movement after the first one I watched because of you, and that show was excellent. And I realized commerce law is the way to go. It's not necessarily just common law, it's commerce for sure. But you talked a little bit with him about something I found fascinating. I want to get your take on what he said, because it was like, I think it blew mine as much as it blew mine. We're both obviously fairly well versed in a lot of the stuff that's going on, a lot of the spiritual stuff and the aspects and the angles. We talked about jurisdiction on this planet, and I hadn't heard this concept before, this perspective of holding them accountable. Like we're all talking about atonement and lawsuits are going on about, holding everybody accountable. And he actually spoke about that's really what's playing out here in terms of Judgment Day, I think, in a way. You want to speak to that a little bit? I'd love to get your take on that. You know what I'm talking about, right? When he talked about that?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Well, I'll say first of all, Cal puts it a lot more eloquently, and I'll try to share the version that I heard, because I was actually speaking about this today, and I remember the first time he shared it, and I was thinking to myself, "Holy smokes, that is wild." And to me, what he's sharing is that Cal has a background in law and had to go through all these things, and he's also had a really wild personal direct experience where he left the firmament, in his words, and went to an adjudication in the spiritual realm. And a lot of people share those stories, and because I've had experiences and I've had a lot of podcasts and different things, I feel like there's a difference in intensity to those. Some, feeling mildly. I think he actually had that direct thing, and there's a difference, right? I've heard ones I'm like, whoa, like you were actually in that experience there fully, rather not like in a lighter sense. So I believe he had that experience, and what he's sharing is that essentially Satan has made a claim that he is God. As I understand, he is God, and this is his realm. And so, what God is doing is allowing this adjudication to happen on planet Earth, and that's what we're playing out. And that's a part of the reason why there's a firmament, because Satan is not allowed to leave until this case is done. And God has put his seed, or a part of himself, in man, and forgotten that greater nature, so that we can make the free will choice between God and Satan. And it's a super wild theory, and there's a ton of evidence though that suggests it's true. One, at the Bible, but if you don't believe in the Bible and you start to look into the rulers of this planet, the people who have mass control, they worship Satan, and it's overt. They make pledges to Satan. All of Hollywood, they sell their soul to the devil, right? So if God didn't exist, why won't they swear in the Bible? Why do they pledge an allegiance to Satan and Lucifer? And why are there so many overt statues, black cube of Saturn, all these different things that are around? Then you get into law, and law is Luciferianism and Satanism, not the supreme law, not God's law, because God gave dominion to land, air, and water to mankind. That's our dominion. But what's happened is usurped it. So Lucifer is allowed to deceive. And so all of the administrative courts, acts, and statutes, and taxes, and all these different things, none of them apply to a man or a woman. They only apply to a person, a citizen, a taxpayer, a resident, this fictional character that they've created through your birth certificate. So I kind of understand this intellectually, but to put it into practice when I might be in a court or something, I'm not at that level of mastery. And to use the martial arts analogy, it might be like you understand that fighting exists, and you start to train in fighting, but if you fight somebody who's pretty good, you're going to get your butt kicked. And that's how I feel about this law, as I've even done about 45 interviews at least on it, but I'm gaining that understanding. And so when he's speaking about this spiritual jurisdiction, it's a very fascinating concept to consider in this realm, because they have to disclose what they're doing. So that's how myself and other people have been accurate for 2 years. And I saw this coming, not because I'm the greatest researcher and I'm not accessing another dimension. I'm literally going online to their mother effing websites, reading their words and listening to them speak. And then it happens. It's not so hard, but people, they can't see past what they can't see. They're not willing to accept that next thing to understand the worldview, because it changes the worldview that they have. So if they accept this one new thing, it shatters everything else is now up for grabs. If they accept this one little bit of new information, that maybe these needles won't help you, maybe something else, then it shatters every other thing. They have to reconsider everything. And that's a very scary concept. It's essentially an ego death right there, letting go of who you think you are and who you are operating in this realm. And so the last episode that we did, it really made me feel good, because I've had these experiences where it is, you know, some people have them with psychedelics and like ayahuasca, and some people have them. I've had them with ayahuasca, and I've had them completely just navigating life, and it's unspeakable. But it's this like force, or this realm, that I think that we're choosing to walk into, and it's hard, but not that hard, because we can see the deceit. All that's required is to make that choice in our guts, in our knowing, between right and wrong. But people are choosing ignorance, right? They're ignoring ignorance. They're choosing it because it's heavy. It's not bad. It's not to condemn them. It's just that, okay, we need to be open to new information, so that we can make a better choice to do something that's good. Because at some point, if you don't wake up, like the doctor doesn't wake up and he doesn't hear all these different things that are happening. Maybe he's good hearted the whole time, good hearted, and then they get enough evidence, but now they start ignoring. There's so much chatter, but they're ignoring. That's when they're going to be held accountable, right? But they can switch it, and they're going to have to make that tough decision. And I think all of us will face that tough decision, or we already have. And then it's to honor that inner voice that says, this is wrong. I can't do this job that I know is harming people. I can't make this choice that's causing harm. And then you're now at the whim of the universe, or of God, the creator, and say, okay, work through me. You need to provide this path, because now you're taking away my money, my security, everything. And that's a tall task for some people. For me, it was easier because I live my life like this. There might be other challenges going away, but it was never about the pursuit of income. It was about the pursuit of experience, knowledge, understanding, wisdom, education, sharing, helping. That's all. How can I help? How can I be of service? And that's kind of how I, people talk about awakened people, not to be confused with woke. That's a whole bag of nonsense. But I believe an awakened person, there's a couple of distinctions. One of them is they don't think about what they can get, they think about what they can give other people. Um, I forget what the other one was, but that's one of the big ones. Yeah, so we'll just stick with that until I remember what the other part. But they don't go around like, oh, what can I get? They think about what I can give. Oh, and they accept everything that they're experiencing, because if they're a victim, they can't change it. So even if it's bad, even if it's challenging, even if it is hard, they accept that. So then they can move through it, because if you're a victim, you're not going to be creating anything or responding to the challenges of what this time and place takes, and just basically generally being a man or a woman here, you're going to be in all of life is challenging, right?
Absolutely. Um, it is a fascinating topic. That was just a whole other level that came in, and I'm like, oh my God, like now I got to sit and figure that all out. Funny, I wore my energy shirt today, but I really dabbled. I thought, no, I want to look a little less, but my usually on Tuesday, my shirt usually says, not today, Satan. Or on the odd Tuesday, it just says F Trudeau. But that's, I always, Tuesdays are great for fighting a good fight, for getting out truth and information and knowledge and things like that, and doing what we do best, right? Which is exactly what you're doing, sharing a message. You talked about leap of faith, and I think um, you know intention, as you spoke of in the other interviews, is very important with that leap of faith. If you don't have a trust, a spiritual muscle strengthened with trust, faith, belief, and intention, yeah, it's really really hard to take that leap of faith into the unknown, into whatever else, into giving of yourself and being of service to others, and always working on yourself too, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, service to self and service to others are kind of, when you have a sovereign perspective, you understand them to sort of be the same thing, right? It's just one coin, two sides. You're empowering the one. When you're working on yourself, you're working on the oneness, right? And when you're giving to others, you're still working on the oneness part, in my perspective, in my experience anyway. But
Yeah, I'd love to
um
just touch on that, because that was your description of that was helpful for me to create like an analogy, because I know this, and as you shared it, it just gave me a little bit of a deepening on understanding that. So it's like, uh, I don't know, let's just say Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, right? Like you look at him and like what he did, you're like, holy shit, like look at that. Now you look at the health of people now and all the food and all the different things. They're like, you see that example. So I've used this in the spiritual example all the time. It's like people are like, we can't see it physically like we can, right? So it's like, okay, well, if everybody is out of shape, well, if you get in phenomenal shape, you show the example of what is possible, and that resonates. People ask you for help, but the same thing spiritually, mentally, emotionally. But this comes from knowing who you are. So if you're the person, what do you want to develop? Because when you become great at that, whether it's music or how you want to help people or what you want to study, when you master yourself, it doesn't matter what you want to master. That skill of mastery is transferable to anything else. And it says, oh, I see what's now possible. It's a very beautiful gift to give others. And it's like, if your cup isn't full, you can't share it out, right? And so knowing who you are and being sound and being capable and self-reliant, now you can help other people and guide them into their own power, because we all have our own path. And one thing I learned uh, maybe about a year ago, really deeply, was I was learning from all these different people. I went to Nepal, studied with the Native Americans, did all that. Basically, on one podcast, I was like, if Jesus is here, I'm going to find him. If Yogananda or Babaji is here, I'm going to find him. And I've tried to track these people down wholeheartedly for a long time, right? Through the podcast, through travels, through everything. Shaolin monks, like, where are you if you exist? And I've met some extraordinary people along the way, but nothing to the realm of like, Jesus or Buddha to that level. But I do have some pretty wild stories that would show like a level of adeptness that is like, it's pretty nuts. But I forget where I was going with that. What the heck was I talking about? I just got distracted by like thinking about like 5 people I met. I was like, all the stories I could like shatter off. I'm like, oh, where am I going with this?
Okay, next call, next time. I want those.
I got some crazy stories.
You're talking about being the example too, right? And sort of just emanating and showing people what what that's all about, like what it looks like to be the service that you're giving to others as well. Because it is proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? And I think that that's a really important thing. Be the change. Be the change. Looking for Jesus is what you were talking about.
Oh yeah, I
That's a
remember. So it's like so the understanding was there's other masters, but you're the master, like you're the solution, you're the gift. So like I worked on human trafficking to bring awareness, a horrible truth that exists that I'm like, how do we solve this? How do I was like thinking as a kid, how do we solve this famine issue? How do we stop war? I can't push any of those buttons or stop it. But I came to this point when I was like learning from someone and it wasn't I learned a lot from them, but I realized that maybe there was, everyone becomes human at some point, right? I kind of put them up on this pedestal a little bit. Then I realized it's like I'm the gift, and not in a way that like, some sort of egoic thing is like, look at me. It's like, no, I have a gift, right? Focus on like rather than putting my energy into volunteering for someone else that I think they have the path, it's to honor my path, my mastery, and who I am. Collaborate with everybody and help it. And I get involved in all kinds of projects still, but then honor, you know what? You have an individual gift also. You're also the solution. You're also the savior. So the world needs you to know who you are so you can share that. And I think that that's true for everybody, whatever that circumstance is. It could be as simple as being a good mother or a good father. I used to think you got to, for me, I like the big expansive idea, speaking and traveling. And, I think that resonates for who I am and what I was put here to do. But I've seen so much value over the last, 5 years on the simple family home, simple good parents, simple jobs, not striving and working crazy hours to just go make money for nothing. They have it, they get a good strong connection with the creator, they grow that over time in a meaningful way, they grow and foster beautiful children, they're wonderful members of their community, nothing fancy about it at all, and it's just magical and beautiful and simple and pure. And I just love that, and I'm resonating with that a lot more as I get older.
word, pure. That's the word. And I think that, looking for Jesus, I think if you look, you'll find Christ consciousness showing up. And I think that's kind of Jesus coming at us in the second form, because we see there's a battle playing out, right? It's either Christ consciousness or the Antichrist movement, which seems to be pushing pretty hard for its agenda. But we know it's us. We're the masters here. We're the ones who were sent here because we were not just competent, but capable and confident as a soul, right? Like we knew we'd be able to take care of this, or we wouldn't be here. I don't believe in mistakes. I don't believe in coincidences, and I sure as hell don't believe in accidents. So I know this shit's going down because it's supposed to be doing this. Um, it's all divinely designed. And for a lot of times, I have to say that, I kind of bring myself to this perspective where, yeah, it's a bit of a shit show, but it is a divinely hot mess that is going to do exactly what we need to do, and that is to illuminate this planet, to lift us into a higher frequency and vibration. Um, you know, excuse me. I think it's really important for us to um, not just like work on ourselves and do all of that stuff, but to encourage others. And that's what you're kind of talking about, was to be the inspiration for other people. And I think that you certainly have inspired me anyway, because you were one of the, few interviews I watched with people, and I thought, man, not only do I want to talk to this guy and I want to talk to him for a while, but I could do that. I really think we need to get more people like that, out there, like me, out there doing this kind of stuff. So you inspired me just by being who you are and being true to yourself. And I appreciate that in a very, very big way. Um, you, I don't know where I want to go next with this. I'm just thinking there's so many things I wanted to talk to you about. And I know I would love to have another couple of calls with you because I'd love to hear those stories you could share. You spoke about working with Native elders, and I don't know if you've done any work here in Ontario, but I do some work with some of them. And I think they're incredible people, and the teachings are remarkable. And I think that pure that we're talking about, that I'm trying to bring where I want to go with that, is so important, because that's nature, and anything natural is what we need to hang on to. you've got a little wee one who is the generation that is, what we're here fighting for, so they can grow up in that freedom and in that beautiful purity that we're supposed to be living, like, back to that return of innocence that has been kind of taken away from us. And since we were hijacked all those years ago, it kind of went downhill. But again, I do believe it's divinely designed. And like, you and Cal were talking about in that interview, like, I don't think God is up there going, oh shit, well, that's a lost cause. Like, I don't know what to do about that. It's just, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many stories, the prodigal son, things like that. I think that's very relative to where we are. And I think what we see playing out in that whole, I'm going to let you have free will. You're going to go and make a big, big mess of things. And we're going to see if we can work it all out. But in the end, you're coming home. You'll always come home, whether you come home the way I want you to, or whether you come home your own way, you're still coming home. And it's kind of the way it works, I think. Space dust return, I think, is the term I've heard people use for those people who have decided to opt into that alternative outcome, which is different than this purity, natural, pure blood stuff that we're kind of working our way towards that way. The proper ascension. I don't want to even use the word proper because that implies that that's incorrect. Because we have free will, I think it's anything goes, isn't it? Pretty much, right? Share with me for a couple minutes where we can find you, what kinds of services you offer. Like, I know you are into coaching and things like that. You train athletes as well?
So, my background was extreme sports coaching, but I always, looked into consciousness and spirituality. And I remember when I was going to write my book, I was thinking, am I going to write a self mastery, spiritual consciousness type of book, or am I going to write a sports performance book? And I remember making the decision to make it a sports performance book because my idea was that the three biggest influences on this planet are actors, musicians, and athletes. And if I could get athletes to adopt what I'm teaching in Zen Athlete, which is not made up by me, it's from martial arts techniques. And this stuff is such old news, such ancient knowledge. It's just not being popularized. It's just not being taught. It's just being left out. And it's the most powerful stuff, right? In martial arts, it's mind, body, spirit. You could take that mental game into everything. It's right there. Why not use it? And so I figured, you know what, if I could get a few pro athletes to be on board with this and either take my teaching and make it their own or promote my book or whatever, I didn't care. Just popularize that, because if you teach it to a kid, they're going to have it for the rest of their life. The problem with adults is I have to kind of like get back, from some mental programming and stuff like that to then install these new kind of upgraded beliefs or, teachings. So now, since moving on from athletes, I mostly work with people who I just say want to make a difference in the world. I've worked with a lot of kind of like sometimes bigger companies, but it's usually just a regular person, right? With a different circumstance that they say, you know what, I want to get a little bit more centered, know who I am. I want to figure out what my purpose is, and I want to work towards that. And so that is not that hard. Figuring out what your purpose is or, your direction, that's not that hard because it's just a series of questions you might not have asked. And over a little bit of time through a bit of work, you'll know the direction. It's like you're out in the middle of a sea and you're following a school of fish. That's what most people do. Easiest thing to get money, right? And how much money you can make with the least amount of effort with the most amount of security. That's the school of fish. And most people are there. Once you pop out, then you have this infinite ocean. You don't know if you're going north, east, south, or west. But when you ask a series of questions, then you're like, oh, I'm going north. And you move in a direction. It's not a final place. It's an inspiring direction, and you'll get an experience, and then it'll refine, 360 degrees and like 360.21. And then, so once we kind of have the direction, then you use spirituality, law of attraction, God, creator, visualization, sports performance, mindset stuff to then create that reality and overcome all of the obstacles that come in the way. Some of it will be self-sabotage and your limiting beliefs. Some of it will be physical reality of like, I don't have the money for that. I don't have the time for that. And so if you've got a strategy to have an inspiring vision that you're willing to put 10 years of your life towards that direction, right? Then you can overcome all the how, because that's really it. Anybody who's created anything of meaning, regardless of they were had a little bit or had a lot, my friends who have a lot that I respect, that I think are putting out good in the world, they have a lot, but it's not different than the people who have a little. You know what I mean? Like in their mindset and quality, because some of the people have a little, they have a really high quality of life too in a different way, right? And it's so you're learning how to kind of architect your life in a little bit of a different way. And then I also have the quantum heart hypnosis stuff, which was just a simple process to help people really understand their direction, but then also all of the common fears we have, like self-sabotage is a common one, abundance is a common one. And so through sports performance, visualization is so powerful. And so people don't get clear on what they want to visualize and create. And that's how I've been able to do everything in my life, is first get clear on where I want to go. Then I begin to visualize that and feel that, right? And then I do all the steps along the way, but the visualization amplifies it. I don't get it immediately, but if I visualize a backflip 100 times before I go do it the next day, my chances and probability of landing it are infinitely higher. And so that can apply to any single thing. And it's the biggest thing that people aren't implementing. And so I guess that's it in a nutshell.
That's absolutely wonderful. Um, preaching my preach, bud. I just love that. Um, intention is everything, isn't it? Like, and it's actually, it's all about the intention. It's the belief and the perspective. If you can visualize yourself doing that backflip, 1,000 times, but if you don't believe you're going to actually do it, that just cancels it all out. As far as I've been, my experience has been. But I do think, as we're talking about this, I think that this is where we need to kind of remind people that these uncertain times, which I keep telling my clients, the flip side of uncertainty is just raw potential, right? Like, it's just anything is possible and everything is there.
Put that on
It's
a
just this
t-shirt.
giant
That's
void that
brilliant.
you're able to, yeah, and it's important for people to know, because this is where the puzzle is thrown up and there is no structure. We're in the middle of a dismantling, and that disassembling is this fourth dimension that I've understood to be the chaos space that we're all in right now. So it is about this wonderful opportunity time for us, if we take our intention and we take our visualization into that place where, some people believe we're heading into a new earth, and that maybe there's a split in realities happening, timelines are crashing, they're collapsing. I mean, I read for people sometimes, and I've just finished telling them something and I hear this clunk clunk and I'm like, what the hell was that? And I realize that's no longer an option for them. They just totally canceled that out in the timeline shift. And I'm like, wow, it's insane what's happening right now. Everything is so intense. But this wonderful opportunity for us to create this new sort of new earth, full of, innocence and purity and light and love and everything we really want, the sovereign life that we really are meant to be living, as the divine beings with the spiritual authority we have. Like, that's really, I think, a thing we got to kind of come back to too. We've really been pushed down about that. We don't have any authority with anything. But anyway, my point is that, I think that, in this time of beautiful raw potential, um, many people have a hard time envisioning something good coming from this, because all we see is the crazy. And we often use the analogy of birth, and I know it was recently talked about with you as well, where it's a big old mess. Is labor. It's intense, it's hard, it's challenging, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, it pushes you out of a comfort zone. And then, of course, you have the birth, which is messy, and nobody tells you what's going on. There's no book out there that warns any woman or their partner about what could fly in the room, like that. And then shit flies, man. It's everywhere, right? Like, everything happens. It's crazy. It's a wonderful hot mess. But after that, you have this incredible, beautiful creature being creation that makes it all so worthwhile. And you forget everything, all the mess, the stress, the crap. And that's what we're all working towards, is this wonderful new being, this new way of being, this new place of being, this new being, completely. And what do you think of how people are able to sort of envision this, and how do you think we're going to be able to really pull it together? Like, do you think that that's how long do you think that's going to take us? And what do you think we're going to do with all that? Does that even make sense? Is that a question?
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's the state of the world, and where are we going, and how many people can be saved, and are we going to be saved, and are we going to go into a horrible future or into a blissful future, and all of these questions. And I contemplate them often and have no answer for like what I know will happen, but what I believe and strongly feel is that it's an individual choice, and that I've played it out in the worst case scenario. So I said, okay, well, what if the worst case scenario, God doesn't exist and I'm literally just created as food for some sort of higher level being, and then I just die and turn into this? Well, even if that were true, it wouldn't diminish any beautiful experience I've ever had. It wouldn't make me want to regret any wonderful thing that I've experienced, and it would make life even more precious. And so I don't believe that. So since I do believe in God and the creator, and that we get to choose our own path, that there will be a heaven on earth or some sort of evolution. Another way people put it is that a coward dies 1,000 deaths, but a brave person only dies once. We all die. So who are you in between? So okay, we knock out the fear of death, but fear of suffering is kind of scary and all that kind of stuff. But it does seem, even by their own definitions, that you need to consent to this Luciferian agenda in court. You need to consent when you get that jab. You got to sign your consent away. And I brought this up, and at the gym, as I have a nice discussion, he goes, "It's funny you say that, because my brother, when he got his, he said under duress." And they had a half an hour phone call before they said yes, and they shouldn't have said yes. So because they had to consent. So that was consent under duress, which is basically most people taking this thing because they need to have their jobs, right? And then the government comes out and says, well, should you give all these people their jobs back now that they're lifted? Well, we didn't make it law. You said you have to implement a policy. And I knew that because I was going through the law summit to get through all this crap. But this organizations didn't even take the time to look, and they wanted to be self-righteous and do whatever, and they were getting pressured by everybody down school, or everybody's pressuring everybody to do it, and so people just did it. And so moving forward, I think it's an individual choice, and I don't know if we can save anyone other than ourselves, but when we save ourselves, we save other people. And so it's not about going out there and finding that life raft. It's knowing who you are, because when you do know who you are, you know that you were created and that there was a spirit and there is a God and there is a creator and a great spirit that you're connected to, that you're a part of. And so is everyone else, but they might not see it yet. And that might not be their time to see it. But what you can do is honor that connection and say, it's more empowering to say, okay, God is in control of this. And no matter what happens, to keep my faith. And it just might be getting tested and tested and tested and tested until this great reveal, because we are in the illusion. We're in Maya. We don't have the answers. We know so little about anything. And when you talked about our intention being important, with all the last couple of years of information and disinformation and the stuff they can do on computers now, and Project Bluebeam, where they can flash the sky, and that's what they say apparently with the towers in 9/11, that they used a hologram. That was the first time they tested it, and you could see it with the Tupac thing. That's crappy technology. You can also see it in the Spider-Man movie, where the bad guy is using holograms to trick Spider-Man into thinking all this stuff's happening. So they have this technology, and if they're showing us, it's probably even more advanced than they see. So how do we know the truth? And I kind of deduce the one thing is the formula for truth, which I learned a long time ago, which is very helpful. And it basically says that everybody has their own information. So that's their perspective. That's their truth. They have that, right? But truth itself evolves. It's not permanent. So you got X and Y axis. So one of them says flat earth. One of them says round earth. One of them says COVID will kill you. One of them says it's a hoax. Well, what most people do is they defend their 45 degrees information, because you think about 90 degrees, they're 45. Well, when you apply the formula for truth, you seek understanding in the other person, right? Tell me why you believe this. Tell me. And then now all of a sudden, when you were going to shut off 45 degrees of information, maybe at like 97.2, you learn one bit that you didn't know. And now you know that. And so everyone you meet, you're opening up to this new information. And as you get another perspective, it evolves, right? I think there's like this old Zen thing about like an elephant. Everybody touches a part of the elephant and they say, what is it? Right? One guy's got an ear, one's got a foot. And so it's all bits of the truth. Right. And so when we're open to more, that a truth is going to evolve. It's like, well, it is true. It's a foot. It is true. It's an ear, but it's something bigger. And the guy up top is like, yo, it's an elephant. I can see the whole picture, but you need to listen to that person that can see the whole picture, and then go around and verify for yourself. And when you apply this, you realize that some people who are not giving you good information, that are giving you lies and they're giving you deception, you can hear that when you ask them to understand, because you know that there's a better answer that explains their nonsense. You're not rejecting it. You're saying, have you considered this? And then you present it to them and they give you a reasonable thing. And then you go, oh my goodness. Well, then you do have knowledge now. You do have a good answer for that question. now you grow. And so that's a long way to say the formula for truth, but then it goes back to the most important thing, which the only thing that I think we know here is what we can do. So it's kind of, we know, if we know we can make a ham sandwich, can probably make a ham sandwich again. We kind of know what we have done. We barely know the past because our memory is all jumbled up and crazy. So we think we know the thing. We don't, for people who don't believe me, think about what you had last Monday for breakfast, right? 2 Mondays ago for dinner. You're probably not going to know, right? So our memory is suspect to begin with. We kind of know what we could do. We could probably do it again. We have an idea of what we could do with our potential, right? We have an idea of that, but all we really actually know is our intention. So we can intend something positive and it can come out negative when we can learn from that. But it's that pure intention I feel like the creator and God is seeking. You know what I mean? If that pure intention to find the creator. And you said, I think with all the spirituality, and I saw a documentary, it's like it had a different title, but something like New Age Deception. I didn't like it because I was really into it. And then now I realize how that happened because I was into spirituality before all the new agey shit came, and I'm all about it. I'm all into whatever you're going to do. I'm fucking all in. Give me all the vibes, give me all the crystals, fucking give me all the fucking give me all of it. Right. But at the end of the day, there's certain like deeper truths where that, I think the spiritual ego could take over the people and disseminate like a clear message, which I've seen happen, especially among the young people out there, right? All the 20 somethings that are doing the thing, and good for the intent, but not a full understanding. And one of the simple truth is that, ask, what is it? Ask and you will receive, and knock and the door will be opened. It's this fucking honest intent to know the creator with all your being, whatever that is, creator, God, Jesus, universe, great, the Native American great spirit, right? But then it comes back to a clarity of great spirit or God, like in a true fashion, right? A true connection. And it is an unknowable force. It's an unknowable thing. But there are definite pathways to that, but it's that honest intent. And as we move through our life, I want to be of service to the true creator. I want to be of service to creation. I want to be of service to life. I want to walk the path, and you open up and in a real honest way. And in my journals and in my heart, that's all I've done for most of my life. Show me how to be of service, because I don't know. I don't know what to do. I have no fucking idea what is going on. I don't know. I know a little bit of some of the experiences I've had, and I've tested a lot of stuff, right? But I really don't know, and I don't know what's right for you. But if we can center in on that, to know the creator, know God, know great spirit, and then intend to be of service to that, I think we're walking a very powerful path forward. And it's fun, and it's scary, and it's uncertain. But then you see the creator do shit that you're like, holy fuck, like there's no way it's random. There's no way it's random. And then it gives you that force or will to kind of keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you and I were both raised Christian. I think I heard you say that once before in another interview. And I was raised by a very charismatic Christian. And so I was exposed to the polarity very young on. I think that's really interesting that you're talking about, getting in touch with the creator and truth, because about, I don't know, 6 months, well, it's freaking March already. Jesus. Sometime back, like almost a year ago, I got so overwhelmed with everything, and I was trying so hard to bring the truth to everybody and to teach people, what they needed to know to get the messages out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay. And there was so many mixed messages, right? Like such distortion in the energy waves and stuff. And it was just this huge pile-on of stuff. And I just said, okay, God, you know what? I know who you are. I've been talking to you my whole life. I don't know who the hell anybody else is anymore at this point. Like, I really have no clue at this point. I just want the truth. Show me the truth and show me a way to validate it for myself. Because I'm a Taurus, and we Tauruses were like, paper in my hand, proof of the pudding. And God sent me on a little goose chase, which is usually what happens for me. My guides get chattering in my head, and then they send me off to some place to find some sort of little, golden nugget along the way. And they did. I found a beautiful citrine cosmic egg, and they said, this is the beginning. This is what you need to know. And I'm like, oh, and then they put an anhydro in my hand. They're like, and this is how far back it goes. And I'm like, holy crap, like millions of years old this water is in this stone. And I was like, is that really how far back we're going? And they said, nothing you've ever been taught is what it is. Everything is a complete, his story. It's just a story, and it's what you've been taught. But truth is everything, and it is in a sense individual, but it's also there's this like objective truth. But um, going back to creator, like coming home to God, and nobody else matters. At this point, I was like, basically, Jesus, I'll talk to you. I actually have another t-shirt that says I'm only talking to Jesus today. And that was, kind of where I was at that point. Not tuning anymore, talking to God, talking to Jesus. That's it. And everybody else can just take a back stand, like a back seat for now. And I'll figure out where I sit with all of this, because ultimately I'm just here for God. I'm not here for anybody else. I'm here for me and God. And I'm here representing, that beautiful divine being that created me, and I'm here as a representative in that capacity. So I want to do what honors that role, what is that role. And that's really what I, for the last 9 months or so. And a lot of people don't like the harshness that comes along with talking about some of this truth. They're like, well, you're not so love and light anymore, what happened to your all cushy stuff? And I'm like, well, it is what it is, right? Like, this is what we're here for. This is, a lot of spiritual people don't want to look at evil stuff. They just think it's not what they want to, and they're just so against it. And I'm like, your capacity to hold truth and to look into darkness is, relative and proportionate to your ability to shine. Hello. Like, how much you can hold in here is really important to the polarity, right? Like that whole thing. So with all of that, and owning our truth, being true to ourselves, living our truth as best we can, to be the example, and to, sort of show everybody what it looks like to really do this job for God, as we are. We have a lot of different names for God, as you have mentioned. I think that's really all that matters, is the sovereignty that we're here to reclaim, right? Our spiritual authority and our natural way of living. And everything is so synthetic and so artificial, and that's really what they're pushing everybody for. But ultimately, I think that again, the truth is everything. The truth shall set you free, right? And once you learn the truth about it all, including this system they've created and how we all got caught up in it and all that other stuff, that's the liberation I think we'll see, right, when that all comes out, in probably I would say the next few months. I think, anyway, as far as I can tell, there's some big stuff happening in the next few months. I'm sure you'll probably find that yourself. Your truth is incredible, and I thank you for sharing it with us tonight. I don't even know. I got so many things right. I'm like, I wanted to talk about this and I wanted to talk about that. I don't have any time left, hardly. Is there anything you wanted to say? Anything you want to share with anybody here, in this small little audience of mine, which they'll get more views as we get along there, but we're just starting out, obviously. Anything else you want to share about where we are and how we can actually, there's a school of thought that says that for every one person who's lit up with truth and light and love and understanding, well, understanding, I guess is the better way to put it, comprehension, we can illuminate 5,000 who are not. Do you think, given the numbers on the planet right now, that puts us at about 1.5 million people lighting it up? You think there's enough of us out here right now that we got this scale tipped at all?
Well, that's a good question, and I appreciate what you shared before. I think is important, because a lot of the reason why things have gotten so bad is because people won't look at the darkness, and that's how they're able to move forward. They count on that. All we need to do is be able to address it and look at it, and that's how they've gotten so far. And so many spiritual people. I was disappointed in the self-help, wellness, spirituality, all the yogis, all silent and going to get jabbed up and then becoming righteous warriors of that. You're like, yo, you fucking missed the whole boat. Right? But they get caught on like the spiritual ego plane or whatever that was, right? So because the truth is there, if someone's offered it to you, you didn't listen, because it resonates, right? You have to have a two-way conversation. And from the beginning of this thing, from day one, I haven't convinced anyone who wasn't ready. And everything, I had a good, clear answer with evidence, not my opinion, with evidence that is ironclad from their websites, from their, you know what I mean? And they just wouldn't look at it. So to look at the darkness, so then we can figure out a solution, That's how we respond to this. I've kind of given the analogy. It's like if one of us goes out and be like, yo, there's a we don't know lions exist, right? And we're out one day and then all of a sudden a lion tears through something. We're like, holy crap, that's traumatic. We can never get out of that cave again. Or we could say, no, that doesn't exist. Well, that person's going to keep getting smoked by the lions until we come together and face it and then learn about it. And then it becomes not a problem. Right. And so they totally need us to operate under fear and uncertainty. Now, with your question, there's a lot of prophecy and spiritual literature that will suggest these things. One does 5,000. I love the analogy that darkness can't. No matter how much darkness you have, it can't extinguish light. One candle can light up however many other candles without diminishing its own life. So I believe that all to be true. Now, whether we're saving 5,000 or whatever, like that tipping point of the world, like one of my best friends, we'd always be so concerned about the world and have these discussions. And one of the things he told me once, he's like, Matt, don't put the world on your shoulders. Right. And so the bigger things, like that question reminds me of that old idea. And then what I try to do now is I give that to Creator, God, God, I'm sad, you know, please, take care of your children. Please take care of these people that I see suffering. It's not in my capability to save anyone, right? I can't. So show me to be the best servant of Creator, creation, and God as a part of your will, and I'll allow that will to be done. Right? This is up to you. And then it's up to that individual choice. But the better I can do that, like you said, about whether it's a physical, right? You see one person in shape. Now they know that the example, the better that the brightness is, the better they are. That's how that effect is going to happen. So we don't need to concern with, this overall thing. It's like, what, no matter what I face, I have this strong connection with Creator that's going to be a part of this immense mechanism that there's no way to comprehend how complex it is. But what we know is our soul and our intent. So as we reach these challenges with greater bravery, with greater intent, with greater service, as much as we're able, I think that's the important thing. And I know what you mean about like the scary part, right? Are we going to save everyone, or can we save as many people as we can? That kind of idea, right? I like what you said earlier about, hopefully they're going to be okay. But everybody has to have that free will choice, and we don't know what that choice means for them, and we can just pray and hope that they're going to be okay, right? Because we don't know where they go. We don't know what, I've only experienced all of this reality through my view. You guys could all be holograms for real. This could totally be the Truman Show fully. It could fully be the Matrix, and I wouldn't know. And so all I really know is my intent, and that's what I gotta pray to and stick to, and just say, Creator, like, save these people. So I guess that's my long-winded answer, because I feel the same way. Ever since a kid, I'd see starvation and be like, what the fuck, like, how's nobody helping this? Why can't I help it? I want to push the button. I wanted to push the button to stop human trafficking, and this is where I think Creator's coming down. I saw this, I think I shared in the Pacao Washington podcast. I saw one episode of a documentary where he just talks about how when God got really pissed, it's when they started messing with the DNA. So the angels are the watchers interbred with the humans. God did the flood. Now they're frigging with the DNA again. And so now we're seeing the God Smackdown, where you have free will. And I've always asked people too, you might like this one, because I'm like, why is there so much suffering? If there's a creator, God, Jesus, why is it so fucked up down here? Why am I constantly looking at people suffering, deceit? What the hell? And so the only answer I've ever received on that, I'd be curious if you ever got a good answer, what you think, is that if we had a free will universe from a God creator, then we would have to have the choice to do right and wrong. And if creator stepped in when you did wrong or you harmed, then we wouldn't have free will. And that actually makes sense. Right. And so, and then also, if we didn't have, in conjunction with, if we didn't see what was quote unquote wrong or harmful or hurtful or selfish, we couldn't correct that behavior and make a different choice. Like when you're a kid and you steal someone's Twinkie and they cry and you feel bad because you should, then you realize you don't want to take people's things because it makes them feel bad. You can adjust that behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And that is God laying the smack down. I think that's what I think that's, there was a viral video about a comedian who talked about that. You see that? Now you see, And quite honestly, I'm pretty sure the Beatles made a comment about being a little more popular than Jesus, and we see what happened to the to the guy that made that comment. They take you out, like, and they do. They tell you the place all along. I think honestly, we've been red pilled and microdosed all along. I think you said something earlier about how well that they won't necessarily say this or that. No, they're not going to admit that they're doing this, but they're not going to tell you they're not. So, Independence Day, oh, we never said it was just entertainment. We didn't say it was all entertainment, but we never said it wasn't. It's kind of that whole deception thing, right? Like, we're not lying, we're just not telling the truth, not telling the whole truth. I think that's interesting. And one of the things you said about the darkness stuff, like, it's true. And I think the boogeyman, I've always said to my clients, the boogeyman is more afraid of being discovered than you are of discovering what the boogeyman looks like. And that's a key, because the more we do illuminate, like open the door to darkness and light that sucker up, it always gives way to the light. It always does. I've worked with a lot of things in my life. I've worked with darkness. I've worked with, helping people release demons and things like that. I've been, ever since I was little, I was exposed to stuff like that, exorcisms and you name it. And it's a very real thing. Like, I have to tell people, like, I know you don't want to believe it, but unfortunately it's true. And the faster we get past that whole disbelief stuff, the faster we can do something about it, right? Like, seriously, nobody wants to believe children are being trafficked or even worse. And yet it's very, even here in Ontario, I mean, we are major hotspots and huge highways for this stuff. Like, it's crazy. And not all of it is about what we think. The topical stuff is, some of it gets very, very dark and very evil. So that's really interesting, that we're kind of touching. I'm throwing all this stuff out before my call is done with you, but I would love to have a chance, if we could ever in the future, have another conversation, because I still have tons more to talk about. And being the master, that was the other thing, because you said it. You can't look outside yourself. Happy comes from within, and we are the masters on the inside. All of that is very relevant to how we can cope with today, how we can create tomorrow, and how we can help other people get through these tough times and stuff. And the last thing I want to say too is this free will thing. I really do believe that this whole getting everybody to roll their sleeves up, convincing them it's the right thing to do, bypassing free will. Oh, this is good. This is good. I think they think they've duped us, and that, they've got away with something, but they're not, and they haven't. And just like you said, I think this might just very well be somebody's grand idea just playing out. How many times have we all had thoughts throughout the day where it just, evolves into these little scenarios, and maybe this is just one of them in a holographic moment. I don't know. I'm all there. I'm all out there, but I'm all there too. Heaven on Mother Earth, I think, is what we are creating here. So I appreciate people like you doing what you're doing, and sharing some time, some light, and some truth with me and mine tonight. Matthew Belair, and I'm pleased to know you're here in Ontario helping that end of the spectrum down that way, because you guys have a lot of stuff going on down that way, Cambridge and all the way down through Hamilton, Wentworth area, all the way there. It's heavy area, very heavy for energy, eh?
Oh, it's brutal. I always tell my wife, I'm like, yo, if we handpick the worst place to be, it will be here. Like, because I haven't wanted to be here. It's like one of the rules of us being together is like, I do not want to live here, just because I love the mountains. As a second I could get out of this town, it was a great town, wonderful friends, wonderful upbringing, wonderful opportunities. As an adult, I choose to be in the mountains. I choose to be in nature. I choose, right? So I'm like, why would I go back to a city with no mountains and like very little nature, and all my nature is like government restricted? The fuck, you know what I mean? I'm used to like going on a truck, and then boom, like the craziest nature ever, and no one's there, and then somebody show up, then people you don't know, and they jumping in the water too, having a great time. So it's like a total different lifestyle. So yeah, there's a lot of heaviness here, but I appreciate coming on the show. I'd be happy to come back again too if you'd have me. And I think all the topics are important, and just to discuss. So thank you for taking the leap to do this and have more discussions. And when I did mine, I said, don't worry about the rating. It was actually funny having people in the live. It was like, ooh, I was like, ooh, it made me nervous. It's always talking to one person. I know it's like on YouTube. I'm like, that's different, not having people in here. I'm like, oh, they're closer to me. So it's cool. So yeah, I never worried about the hits. Like I had like 150,000 2 years ago in a month, right? And that was like growing, and then they deleted me, right? And then I was like 300 on it one day, and I'm used to 5,000 or 7,000. So I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I believe you're doing it for the right reasons, and it'll touch the people that it needs to touch. And that's all we can do, right? Is just do the things day by day over time to help. And what I'd leave the listeners with that question is that you asked before is, the best spiritual teaching I ever heard was from David Lombard Senepas. And he said, do 3 kind acts a day, go out of your way to do it, and don't tell anyone. And if you do that for a week, you will probably experience what I refer to as a universal wink. Something weird will happen, and they're like, whoa. And you'll know. And he went on a big talk about how the body's electromagnetic. So when you do something good for someone, you're increasing your electromagnetic field. But when you talk about it and blabber, then it's more of an ego thing. So you haven't actually been of service. It's like, hey, yo, I just went and did this thing to help other people. And I was like, well, how am I gonna do 3 kind acts? Pay it forward. He used to say, ask people's name, because it's a spiritual connection. Now, how relevant is that teaching when everyone's masked up? You know what I mean? So a smile, get someone's name, is an act of kindness. There you go. You got one there, by you just doing that, being considerate, picking up a piece of trash, giving someone a compliment, write a list of 50 people you haven't talked to, send them kind words of a memory that you had, to send like a little energetic spark. And so making that, like, don't make sure you do that day. And to go back to your shitty days and dealing with it, do that 3 kind acts. So you feel like shit, fine, think about someone you haven't talked to in a long time, send 3 kind messages, see if that changes how you feel.
Love that. And I think that's power right there. Like, that's a powerful place to be, when and you don't have to say anything to anybody. It's just you and God's secret, right? It's you and God in on this little, I'm doing this, and it's just about you and me. That's it. And I think that's remarkable. And so I appreciate that. And I would certainly encourage people to do that 3 kind acts for sure. And our Father, I have to say, you said something earlier about some of the things that we can sort of do to help ourselves stay in focus. And I think our Father is one of the most important prayers that we can actually say right now. I think that, especially those who've gone ahead and allowed themselves to be compromised. It's interesting, that word compromise. My guides for the last 2 years have been telling me, stop telling people they can compromise. Don't let them compromise. Tell them no, no, no. And I'm like, why? And they said, compromise is what's got everybody into this mess to begin with. And I'm like, no shit. I said, what do you expect me to tell them? They said, cooperation. You're here in cooperation. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Because all you hear now is how this one's been compromised and that's been compromised. And now the DNA is being compromised. My God. But the Our Father, I think, is very important. And I love that that part that comes into, because when you can say the Our Father and then do 3 kind acts, you're really making a major impact, I think, right? Because you're not just bringing that in here, but you're sending it right back out again, because that's the intention, right? It's pure and beautiful. Matthew Belair, again, just an absolute honor. And I love all your stuff. I would recommend everybody go to his channel and spend like a whole weekend binging his stuff. Yeah, and there's just wonderful content and all kinds of it, like just such a spectrum you provide for people. So thank you for all that you do, all that you are, and as we are humans being, all that you be, my friend, my new friend, if I should be so bold as to call you that. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here in the vote of confidence. So yeah, there's a lot of selection. So I really appreciate, I'm glad you enjoy the work. It's been fun, just talking to people about stuff I find interesting. And so I hope that, people resonate with that. Just the whole intent is like having meaningful conversations about sometimes spiritual stuff, sometimes crazy stuff, and just, seeking the truth, seeking evolution, seeking solutions. Right. So the more of us that do that together without, worrying who's right or wrong or looking dumb or whatever, just the higher truth prevails, and we keep seeking, and we all get there together. Was that rising tide, raises all ships. So appreciate your support. Thank you.
And I'll leave you I'll leave you with this. Not a while back ago, a few years ago anyway, my guide said, you're gonna have to stop calling yourself crazy, and the stuff you do crazy. We prefer you call it extraordinary, because that's exactly what you do and you are. So there you go. Not so crazy.
Beautiful. Love it. Thanks.
God bless you, Matthew Belair. Have a wonderful evening. And to you and yours, I wish you all the best love and light.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Bye now. Next time. Till next time.